Welcome back. We are still talking about my journey through the relentless courage of a scared child. We are hopefully finding and touching on topics that relate to you and some of the things that you guys have dealt with growing up. I'm getting these messages. I love them. Keep them coming, please. And we left off with EMDR and when we were dating.
And it was sort of a perfect segue into about 4 months into our relationship.
I had no idea what I was getting myself into with you.
It's been the best time of your life.
It has, but it was.
I
was faced with a lot of personal work. Let's put it that way.
Pain, right? When children have growing pains, it's because they're going to be bigger. And
it's like working out in the gym.
And one of the early things that happened for us. So when I was writing The Brain in Love, it just had been very clear to me. If you want someone to fall in love with you, you want to do something special for someone they love.
But you probably should make sure they actually want you to do that for the person.
And so you got a call
from my sisters, my 2 half sisters. And they were freaked out because my dad had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. He was a recluse. He wouldn't come out of his room. He wasn't showering. He wasn't going to the grocery store. He was a mess. And I hadn't seen my dad. Now, because of my situation with him growing up, he had left when I was a baby. We did not have a good situation or a relationship growing up, even after he finally came back and decided he was going to become a Baptist minister. And that was very complicated. His journey with religion was complicated and complicated our relationship more. I'll leave it at that. But I write about it in the book. But it didn't make things better. Let me put it that way. Then he leaves the ministry and is again now doing drugs with my sister, one of my half sisters, and I just disconnected from him. And I finally had stopped being angry at him, but I also didn't have a relationship with him. I finally, along the way, was just like, I'm too tired to be angry with him anymore. I had disconnected from him, didn't talk to him for years. And then finally I was just like, I'm too exhausted to be angry, but I don't want him like in my life. And so then I get this call from my sisters that he is diagnosed with Alzheimer's and they need help. And I'm like, and what's your point? Not my monkey, not my circus. Like, he's never been there for me. It's not my job to be there for him. And that's really how I felt. I had just come out of a really awful divorce. I was finally dating my life was finally getting back on track. I was doing a lot of hard work with myself. I had a baby, a toddler, and that was not even close to like on my list of things to do, was taking a dad that had never been there for me.
Yeah. And for me, family's super important. I'm one of 7.
Your family's not like my family. Mine's like Jerry Springer. Yours is like Leave It to Beaver. So mine is like The Nightmare on Elm Street, actually.
And so with his diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease, one of the reasons I got so excited about imaging is one of my very first cases was Matilda, who had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. And SPECT is actually very good at distinguishing, is it Alzheimer's or vascular dementia or frontal temporal lobe dementia or pseudo-dementia. And
yeah, but Matilda, I didn't really care at that time.
Had pseudo-dementia. And when I put her on the right treatment for her brain, she got her memory back. And it's one of those dopamine, oh my God, incredible moments. I mean, it's sort of like the movie Awakenings.
Yeah.
And when you have that kind of experience as a doctor,
empower,
you remember it. And it just gave me all the chemicals of happiness. And so when I
loved what you did. I just didn't want to bring my dad into my life.
And so I said, well, you should bring him down and we should see him and at least let me work him up. And
I'm like, and where is he going to stay? And you're like, with you. And I'm like,
why not?
Yeah, no.
I didn't mean forever. I just meant, so we could work him up.
What happened.
Well, keep going with the story. So I scan him. He doesn't have Alzheimer's disease. In fact, he's on a toxic combination of medication that I ended up pulling him off the medications. I mean, he had to stay so that I could work the plan. And
he had to stay. Let's repeat that. He had to stay, so it wasn't temporary. So you could work the plan, which means he lived with me. And yeah.
And what happened?
So here's the truth. It didn't just all of a sudden, our relationship didn't just all of a sudden get better, but we had time. We ended up with time. As his brain got better, we started having these opportunities to heal. And within months, he was actually, not only did he not have Alzheimer's disease, he had pseudo-dementia, and he gets better. He loses 20 pounds. He starts teaching all-day seminars at the church and leading Bible study in my house. And he starts getting sort of back into his ministry. And I'm like, I don't know if I trust this right now, because I've never really trusted that with him. But he started, like, I really could see this sincerity probably for the first time, probably honestly for the first time ever. And so we started to have these opportunities to talk. And over time, now we also had a lot of hard times that we had to work through, but we had the opportunity to have those hard times to work through. And then fast forward, when we finally get married,
he became more independent.
He became more independent. And as we got married, we ended up helping him get a roommate. And then a few years later, he ends up passing away with, like a leukemia, like a blood disorder. Similar to leukemia, and nothing related to his brain. And he ends up moving back in with us. He was on hospice. And so we moved him back in with us at the end of his life. And so he ends up dying in my arms with me praying for him. But I had the opportunity to really work on all of that anger that I had had with, all of those bad memories growing up, all the anger that I had with him. And I was able to completely forgive it. And he had a harder time forgiving himself than I had for forgiving him. I didn't realize how much he had been carrying, just regret for the way he had handled his life and how he'd been a dad. And so we were able to work through that. And it really was a gift. And that was when I really realized, it was the second time that I realized, okay, I was arguing with God again. And the first time was at the drug rehab center. And it's like, no, God was trying to give me this gift, and I kept trying to push it away. He was giving me this gift of healing. So
yeah,
you're
that was awesome.
You're going to take the credit now, are you?
No. I'm going to take the credit for being who I am, which is
you're amazing,
wanting to be helpful. And when someone is suffering, it's just so easy to call people bad.
When you grow
easy.
up in trauma, it's easier. When you grow up in trauma, it's easier.
And it's just harder to go why. But when you've seen tens of thousands, actually it's getting closer to hundreds of thousands of scans, it just softens your heart.
Mm-hmm.
And you just go, well, why was he like that? And which of the 4 circles that you and I always talk about were broken or
in his case,
help?
pretty much all of them.
And his mother had suffered with severe depression.
Mm-hmm. And he was abused when he was young. And
yeah. And you got to meet your uncle.
Yeah. And so one of the gifts through that was that I didn't even know my dad. My dad didn't introduce me to his half brother or talk about him when I was growing up. I didn't really see my dad. He has this half brother that I didn't even know about. And when I met Bill ends up being like this amazing human who is so much like me.
Your real dad.
Yeah. I'm like, why wasn't he my dad? Like he literally was like, I'm like, we had so much in common.
He's
it was
like
crazy.
A 9th degree black belt.
He was like so into karate. I was super into karate. Like we just had so much in common. And I'm like, that was the weirdest thing. And it was right at the end of my dad's life that we connected. And it was like this last little gift that I got was like, oh, this person, like I'm so bonded to him. And we just like instantly bonded. And it was pretty amazing.
Yeah. So as he passes, you really get.
And my Aunt Patty too. Like
family.
Both of them are just amazing humans. And I just love them. Yeah.
So the help was for him.
Yeah. And the healing was for me.
Yeah. So what did you learn?
Has that ever happened to you where you had to take care of someone you resented and you didn't want to do it? and what happened? I would love to hear the story.
Write it down, what you learned. Post it on any of your social media sites.
And tag me.
Brain Warriors Way podcast and Tana Amen. And if you can relate, we'd love to read your story. Post it at brainwarriorswaypodcast.com. We'll enter you into a contest, to a raffle to win a copy of the Relentless Courage of a Scared Child. I hope you just give it away to so many of the people you know who struggle in relationships. So guess what? That's all of us. You guys have heard about the goat. No one is immune. Leave it to Beaver with a little bit of Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Seriously.
at least if you're.
I know. I always think of your family. Your family's so amazing. And then I heard that story, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, I don't feel quite so bad about my life now.
Stay with us.
If you're enjoying the Brain Warriors Way podcast, please don't forget to subscribe so you'll always know when there's a new episode. And while you're at it, feel free to give us a review or 5-star rating, as that helps others find the podcast.
If you're considering coming to Amen Clinics or trying some of the brain healthy supplements from BrainMD, you can use the code podcast10 to get a 10% discount on a full evaluation at amenclinics.com or a 10% discount on all supplements at brainmdhealth.com. For more information, give us a call at 855-978-1363.